Hello and welcome to Motivated Learning, a show for, by, and about the learning and development community. I'm your host, Buddy Broyles. We are broadcasting live on Visual Learning Solutions LinkedIn and Facebook pages from our production studio here in Frisco, Texas. Today I am thrilled to be joined by Kassy LaBorie. Kassy is the founder and principal consultant at Kassy LaBorie Consulting LLC. She is a virtual classroom master trainer who specializes in developing trainers to be engaging and effective when facilitating programs in platforms such as Zoom, WebEx, Adobe Connect, and more. Kassy has worked with many Fortune 500 firms in a wide range of industries and sectors, including hospitality, pharma, energy, government, NGOs, nonprofits, and so many more. Hello, Kassy. How are you today? Welcome to the show.
Having me today, buddy.
Well, it's great to see you. So first, let's just kick off with tell our audience about your career history and what made you you today.
Big question. I love that question because I was one of those people who had no idea what I wanted to do when I was in, high school and trying to figure out what am I going to do? I should go to college. What should I do? And I kept kind of putting it off and thought, well, I'll just get an English degree, because I love reading and I'm probably more of a creative, but I'm not necessarily wanting to be an English teacher. But, I went through that whole thing. And I went to university in the days when you actually filled out the application and in like a piece of paper. And they sent a flyer when I was going to San Francisco State, actually. They sent a flyer in there that it said, oh, consider speech and communication. And I'm like, what's that? That sounds good. Boom. I ended up getting a degree in public speaking from San Francisco State in the late 90s. And that was what sort of introduced me to the beautiful world of learning and development, because through those classes that I was taking, I found that I could teach classes, and I have a love for acting, but I didn't have enough of a love to want to be in auditions and try to get work. And I always kind of talk about those of us that like to act, but also want to have a job, do very well as trainers in learning and development. And so that's kind of my backstory and how I went into it. And I'm just so happy that I found something that I have loved ever since I was studying about it in university.
Well, I think it's great that you also recognize that at an early age, even you're recognizing there's a problem and that you can help solve it, by stepping into the field and doing things well. So that's important that people like you do that, and you're doing it very well. So I want to go to the next question. So let's talk about virtual training. Like, how did you get into it? And a better way that you put it is, who is to blame for this?
Well, it's such a fun story, and I'm so thankful for it. And RuPaul is to blame, really, for my wanting to be in virtual training, because I was living in San Francisco. I'm driving down the 101, which is a very busy freeway, and there was an ad campaign that WebEx was running with RuPaul, and it said, we've got to start meeting like this. And so it's the late 90s. There's all kinds of great tech companies. And that really stood out. And I thought, you mentioned, you accidentally in the beginning of the intro said film. And I thought that's really cool, because film is something that I very much love. And in another life, I was a famous film star, probably in the 40s. And so that caught my attention. And I thought, any company that's doing an ad campaign that creative and that interesting, I want to work for. And so I just immediately went to that company and became a product trainer with WebEx because of RuPaul. And excitingly, they gave me a boa and a beach ball when I joined, and it was amazing.
Well, that's really cool. Love the intro swag. It's just like, hey, there's cool toys. So as we know, and we talk about this in every show, and everything you've attended in the past 18 months, it's the same thing, right? So we have a lot of transition going on, and it's a good thing. In a lot of ways, it's a very good thing. So people are transitioning to their instructor-led training skills to what you call, and a lot of people call, is the VILT, virtual. What's one thing someone could do that's watching the show right now to improve their VILT skills?
I think that if we could recognize that people we use technology to connect with each other. And I know technology is really cool, and I certainly love that. But one thing that you could do is just recognize that we're just people, that we're people on the other side of that screen. most people don't really sit and listen and learn. They like to be active and doing and connecting and part of the process. And so instead of, having everybody be on mute and sit down, be quiet type of learning, it's like open your session early and have a question so that as soon as they join, they are responding to you. And you set the tone right from the moment of first contact, if you will, that this is about you, for you, and led, by you and the way that you interact here. And that's the first thing. Certainly, there's more work that we got to do, and I think that we need to help people feel comfortable enough to want to speak up and to be part of that. But if we can just focus on people and connecting and building relationships, the technology falls in line and keeps changing and sometimes gives us trouble. But really, it's just the people, and really recognizing that the sit down and listen thing isn't working. So why don't we maybe stand up and be involved instead?
In the calls I'm often on, we immediately make light of, and you're familiar with this with all the platforms you've worked with, we make light of the first 5 minutes being just everybody trying to figure out the technology. And so it's almost an easy, a gentle conversation about we're waiting for somebody that we know is very technically savvy, but their mic's not on, or something to that effect. There's so many really interesting, it happens in every instance. So I want to kind of change the path to talking about the role of a producer. What exactly is the benefit of a producer for these different platforms, if that's the context?
It's such a wonderful thing because people are far more open to the idea of needing help and recognizing that trying to put the entire design and plan and delivery and execution and follow-up on one person is just not working. And I think that became very evident in the last couple of years when all of us had to go online to continue doing business. And so this idea, the concept of the producer, a person who's focused on technology and logistics, it's kind of what we used to always very much pay attention to with like the training coordinator. The person who helped us get everything in order so everyone could get to the class and get all the travel in line. And, and if we even take it a step further back, which isn't something that we always considered, but when we teach in person, it was never my responsibility to have to actually also build the conference room or supply the tables and the chairs. I might have to bring some equipment for what I'm teaching, and I might have to bring resources and things, but it wasn't up to me to supply the electricity and the actual building. And somehow when we went online, we just said, trainer, do it all. And then we were wondering why the trainer was failing to connect with people. I was like, oh, well, they could be, focused on all the logistics and all the tech and all the planning that's going on around it and the attention that deserves and needs. And so enter the role of the producer, or if it's not a designated person, perhaps it's a team of people paying attention to the production of the event. And I think that was a pretty long answer to what that is and how important that is.
Well, it's interesting because I've been in the television production field, a lot of it in training for most of my career, which has spanned 30 years. So I've always seen the importance of a producer role. And as we transfer to an online in the past 18 months, it's far more important because the technology is always a barrier for most people. And if you have someone who is specifically, as you mentioned, when you walk into a building, you don't need to know how the building was built or where the power is and so on. There's usually some type of person there to help you, and that's what we've all witnessed is the hardest transition for people who are very skilled at educating others, understand how to engage, but that the barrier is this technology. And if you have someone to help teach you, as that's part of what you do, is help people understand the technology first, then they can reach their audience in the ways they're used to. So let's transition to different ways to engage the online audience. What are some excellent ways that you know of and that you can share?
Yeah, and it's like, and I should say too that when a person who is teaching online is working with a producer, it's not that they're not paying attention to the technology. It's just that the producer is taking the lead on it to make sure that it works. And so, in order to engage when you're the online trainer, presenter, facilitator, it's like recognizing how the technology works. You've got to know it enough. In the same way that when you're teaching or presenting in person, you know how to work a room. Remember those days when we were taught how to work the room and the techniques that we would learn to do that. It's like working the online room is understanding where the chat's going to be, and let's look at the chat as a form of a conversation, that those words could have been spoken out loud. When they come through the chat, read them, respond to them audibly as if they were spoken out loud. So that's one of my first tips, is to look at the chat like it's a conversation. In my first book, Interact and Engage, my co-author and I, Tom Stone, we coined the word chat-versation. So let's have chat-versations. And so when I'm teaching, I have the chat panel open and available for me to read while I'm presenting. And I'll just look at it. Like it might be over on the right, and you see me looking at the right, and I'll say, "Oh, that's right, buddy. That's such a good point. Let's talk about what you just said there in the chat." And I won't reread it, but I'll look at it having read it and responding to it as if you said it out loud, which then makes it like an open door and a natural way for you to come off mute and explain. And then as I hear you come off mute, perhaps other people have sent something in the chat, and I could say, "Oh, look what Ben said while you were talking, buddy. What do you think about that?" And it's like you just integrate what's happening in the technology into a natural and a sort of conversational way of delivery. And I think that's one of the first things that we can do to engage, is just like look at the technology like it's just how we are and part of how we're communicating today. It's not unusual.
So I know you've written a couple of books, at least, on these topics. Can you talk to me about your titles and how they can find the books? Because I know it's just packed with great information like what you discussed. Talk me through the titles and so on.
Oh, for sure. Thank you so much. My first book is called Interact and Engage, and it's got over 50 activities for virtual training, meetings, and webinars. And it's available on Amazon. And also then my second book is called Producing Virtual Training, Meetings, and Webinars. So it really breaks down all these production tasks that you and I just spoke about, and ultimately what the skills you would need to build yourself into that role of being a producer. The first book, Interact and Engage, is like a cookbook. It's like a whole bunch of recipes for activities in whatever kind of online event you're running. Both of the books are available on Amazon, and they were published by ATD Press. So they're also available at td.org as well.
Well, that's terrific. So before we close the show, and I definitely encourage everybody to get those books. We keep a lot of books on our bookshelves, and I'm going to order both of those. I apologize for not ordering before, because I've seen what they are and I know they're magic. And also, I've witnessed so many. We were on a meeting this morning, and I think if the facilitator, and I wouldn't, basically the person that's opening, if they had some of these skills, including, and I'm sure it's in there or something to that effect, it's just orienting everybody. Welcome to the meeting, everybody. Here are the things you should know about this meeting. It has these devices that you can use to interact and engage in all of that. That stuff's so important right out of the bat, because you may call out, say, everybody check the chat, and if you haven't been introduced to the chat or don't know where the chat feature is on this specific tool, then you're lost, and that
right.
There's lots of miscommunication there.
And I love to sneak that in too, buddy, to that point. I love to say, "Hey, how's everybody doing today? Type it in the chat." And then they're like, "Where's the chat?" And I go, "I know, yeah, we're going to use it the whole time. What are your thoughts on our topic today? Enter that into the chat, or let's circle on the map where we wish we were located today." And everyone's
right.
like, "How do I do the circles? How do I do the circles?" Here's how you do it. We're going to be using them the whole time we're together. So I like to sneak in the use of the technology into questions around getting to know you, setting the stage, learning about how we're going to be learning today together.
Well, I know in your years that you've hosted countless meetings, I'm sure everyone may agree that a meeting produced by Kassy or facilitated by Kassy is probably far more engaging than most instructor-led in-the-room meetings from a virtual standpoint, because you sound like you really know how to engage any audience and get everybody ready to learn. So before we close the show, certainly. Before we close the show, I want to make sure everybody knows how to reach you. So we're going to put your social media page up, and just tell us. Of course, you have your website. What are the best ways to start a conversation with you?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So really, LinkedIn is just the first place to go to connect with me. And then at my website, Kassy Consulting, I've got all sorts of resources, things that are on the way too. I'm about to put up a new book with my virtual training heroes, which was something that was born out of the last 2 years. And so I think you'll find that interesting, and also a sort of visually fun way to learn how to do virtual training.
So last question for you, And this is an important one because we know a lot of people are either transitioning from other industries or they're just getting started, just like you did. What advice can you give those who are entering the learning and development industry? What pathways can they avoid to do well?
I really think it's so wonderful to just to network, to reach out, like find some people on LinkedIn that are doing what you want to do, and connect with them and look at what they have to say and what they're doing. I've learned so much from other people and connecting with other people and being introduced to others. Buddy, it's how you and I have come to know one another as well. And I really think when you're new and you're just exploring, it's so neat to learn from other people's stories and the paths that they have taken. Because certainly it works as a place to inspire you and then to give you ideas on what you can do too.
Well, that's excellent advice. Thank you, Kassy. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I'm thrilled. I can't wait to read your books and just engage further. So again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Buddy. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. So if you'd like to learn more about Visual Learning Solutions or about this show, Motivated Learning, please contact us on the following links. You can reach us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn, reach out to Buddy Broyles, that's myself, on LinkedIn, and then of course you can always call us or email us at info@visuallearningsolutions.com. So once again, thank you for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.